Hey, good afternoon. I'm Charles Garrison. This is Jacksonville Buzz. And today I'm here with Joshua Pardue. He's with GNP Development. And we're going to be talking about the different projects he has going around here in Jacksonville, along with the rest of the state. Joshua, how are you doing today?
Very good, Charles. Thank you for having me.
Good, good. So you and I, we know each other for a few years, but for the rest of the audience, tell us a little about yourself. So you're from Ormond Beach originally. You have a little base down in Tampa, but you have been here in Jacksonville for a number of years and have a lot of projects happening around Jacksonville. Yeah,
that's right. I grew up in Ormond, went to school, USF, University of Tampa, downtown Tampa, started a property co there, doing renovations during school, turned into a commercial development company post, lived in New York for a little while, raising money, bringing that between projects with developers, and then now I've shifted a lot of the focus just, of course, to GNP Development based out of Tampa, but we're doing projects all over the state of Florida.
Awesome. So specifically where I live in Springfield, you have a lot of great projects happening. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, the Springfield journey started 2012, 2013, when a lot of the banks were working through the distressed properties, and we were actually working on the iLife building downtown, a few other assets in one of Iberia's portfolios, and came across the old Jobs Corp building. The synagogue had burned down maybe a year before, and there was a lot of, some distress, some back taxes, the buildings were in shambles. But when I came to town, having grown up in North Florida and been passionate about Jax, believing Jax is the next chapter in Florida's evolution, seeing that property and seeing the neighborhood. I mean, Southern Living calls it Springfield one of the most up and coming, neighborhoods in the country. Yeah. And it took me, I think, 2 site visits to fall in love with the area, and several projects and a house in the neighborhood later, here we are.
Yeah. So the Carpelli's Museum, that I remember going there and seeing the cool older documents, different things of that nature. But right now you're working on turning it into an event space, right? You want to tell me a little bit more?
Yeah. So Mr. Carpelli's had it for 30 plus years as a manuscript museum. It was originally a church, and it's always had different types of events and gatherings and community, some art, some monuments, some of that. So it's always been that same use, and we're keeping it the same in that regard. But the challenge when we came across the project was that they hadn't put any money in it in 30 years. And so the roof was starting to literally cave in. The windows are bolting in, as you've seen, and the water coming in, the moisture, the plaster. The basement had water encroachment. And so what we learned from previous projects like the Jobs Corp building that we got involved in after the roof had caved in and it was total loss. You're just buying the shell, and a lot of challenges to bring that shell back to life. What I quickly acknowledged, we had to dry in and secure the building with roof, HVAC, water basement systems, and suck all the moisture out to kind of preserve it for the next chapter.
Yeah. Next weekend is going to be Porch Fest. It's going to be, and a couple of your projects are on that same little thoroughfare. You got some things planned for it?
Yeah. Obviously, Porch Fest is the biggest weekend of the year for the Springfield community. A ton of fun. Something I do every year. We'll have booths set up in front of the Carp, as we're calling it, the Carp Grand in the next chapter, and then in the Springfield Lofts, the old Jobs Corp building right across from Henry Cluto Park. There's the corner there where the synagogue was. That's gonna have food trucks and a stand, and we'll be running around actually doing some petitions for support for Springfield Lofts upcoming legislation.
We'll talk a little bit more about the lofts in a second, but you already have a completed project in Springfield with the Boys and Girls Club. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, great case study I'm really proud of. And I bought a house in the northwest quadrant off the kind of Pearl and Silver area, and then you'd see the kids at the Boys and Girls Club, which is on 8th and Pearl, 40,000 square foot, 2-story school, beautiful building. The Beulah Beale Schoolhouse was the original 1911 school that was there, and so we named the LLC Beulah Beale Schoolhouse LLC. Bob and Paul with Boys and Girls Club ran into me because we would go over there and drop off. You go to Family Dollar and you buy a bunch of masks for Halloween and chocolates, and we'd leave it for the kids, and just kind of got to know the building, built that relationship. And when they were moving to the teen center on the east side of Springfield, the building had a lot of carry costs and challenges. We took that over, stabilized it. They moved over, used that funding to fund their relo. And then after renovating the buildings and stabilizing them, rezoning them, we now have it stabilized with a great little community. There's a school operator in the large building, but we're also proud of, it's called the Villages on Pearl and 8th, a few smaller bungalows that we painted white and black. And that has a community of creatives in there. You've got Master Don karate class for the kids and daycare program. Nexus Art Studios, bringing a lot of young crib. And so even last night we took one of the 4,000 square foot buildings, made it a haunted house.
Oh man, that's cool.
And we all volunteered and dressed up and scared a couple of kids. We might have scared too much in retrospect, but it was, couldn't ask for a perfect, more fun Springfield night.
Yeah, that's awesome. So lofts, housing, mixed use, right? So tell me, what does that grand vision look like?
When we started the journey with it, the neighborhood was a little bit more resistant some years ago with a PUD process, but now I think that Springfield is united that density is a good thing.
Yeah.
We need density to drive the retail on Main and mixed use, and so we're going back in. We had permits ready going into COVID, and then obviously with everything COVID paused, we had to kind of restructure the capitalization of it because National Park Service placed some restrictions on the development plan that wouldn't have been feasible. To your point, like the area needs housing,
right?
And we're maxing out 78 units in that.
Yeah.
A very unique, cool units, which I think are really going to help Jacksonville put in the map in some ways. When you convert the old buildings into the kind of the lofts, and you build some new, but you keep the original windows and the walls exposed, it's going to create a really cool product that Jax, I think, could use more of. There's a few case studies in like San Marco. And so that is going back in now for legislation with OED, Office of Economic Development, and we're excited to be starting those meetings coming up with partnership with Mayor Deegan and their office, and then looking to get that project back in the permit process and moving forward.
That's really cool. So we talked about the different projects you are doing now and have done, but tell me a little bit more about Joshua and GNP.
Yeah, right on. When I grew up in Central Florida, I looked at the state. I always loved the state of Florida. Yeah. I moved up north to get out of my system, but my long-term passion's been to add value and build on my community. And so right now I'm splitting time between the house in Springfield, working in Ybor City, downtown Tampa, which Ybor City in a lot of ways has similar vibes to historic Springfield. We have a few projects in South Florida and Orlando as well. We just completed a surgery center there, and we're looking at starting a hotel. And a lot of this stuff just came from, being passionate about the state and getting after it during the recession, when a lot of people in our business you read Lehman Brothers fails on the newspaper,
right.
And it's really easy to step back, went the other way and counted on our state and doubled down and raised a bunch of funds and bought assets throughout the state.
Okay.
That was the driver, if you will.
Yeah. So besides, the cool mixed-use projects you have going on, and we'll talk a little bit more in a part two, but what does GNP really like to focus on these days?
Yes, the commonality strategy is some single tenant build to suit.
Okay.
Think a little bit more corporate, lower risk work where you work with a medical practice, go find a site, deliver a custom building for them, they pay rent. Those are more stable projects. And then, the passion project is really urban, adaptive reuse, and community building. Placemaking.
Yeah.
We're very excited at the Phoenix Arts District, launching another thing that's all raising Springfield up. Had the grand opening of the Emerald Station, a couple of those projects a few days ago where the city came out to and really celebrated that. And that's the fun stuff when you're building community and you're able to provide local jobs and bring all that stuff together and save these old buildings. That's the mission and the passion.
That's awesome. That's really great to hear. So as we wrap this up, and I've heard a lot about your passion around Jacksonville, but really tell me why Jacksonville? I mean, there's so many other, cool cities, but, me being from here, I love Jacksonville, but I want to hear why Joshua loved Jacksonville.
Yeah, I think, it goes back to overall view and passion for the state of Florida.
Yeah.
And then having grown up and watched South Florida develop and become what it was and what it is now. Of course, now it's like almost untouchable in ways with the Northeast and the money and the flow and the livability. And then Central Florida and then North Florida, I've always historically kind of watched the relationship amongst these separate markets. And you have to appreciate the state of Florida is big. And the cultures and people are totally different. It's one state, but what's the saying? The further north you go, in some ways, the more southern you actually get.
Yeah.
I love Jacksonville and the fact that it's totally different than Central or South Florida. And it has, in the future chapters, it has some indie vibe. You have the music history, and you have the fact it was the first coast, and you have the fact that now downtown has all those buildings. and that revitalization. All great cities in America focus on downtown as well.
Yeah.
And just now, Jax is getting really back into seeing that, and that opportunity is huge. And as the migration patterns of people keep moving to Florida, not everybody, believe it or not, everyone wants to live in Miami and deal with that and deal with those vibes and that culture. And I think that the Southern and that warmth and the comfortable quality of life that Jacksonville brings is a huge opportunity all the way from the beach. And of course, my focus is on the urban core and downtown with the Dalton building and Phoenix and all this different stuff that we're doing there. But all ships rise with rising tides. As the state continues to go up, you're going to see people that don't want to live in those other markets continue to migrate here. Right. And obviously the residential, and you look at Gateway and you look at the Emerald Trail.
Yep.
And we were talking about before, Emerald Trail is akin to the Riverwalk in Tampa.
Right.
And if you rewind back, Tampa 20 years ago had the same challenge in that at 5 o'clock people left.
Yeah.
There's no residential, so there's no real good retail.
Yeah.
But the Riverwalk, along with a few good projects, had the tipping point. Now downtown Tampa's running.
Yeah.
Well, and seeing that between 13 and now, the acquisitions that we've made are along the trail and anticipating that growth for the city of Jacksonville.
Yeah, yeah. Well, cool. Well, thank you for joining us on Jacksonville Buzz, and thank you all for joining us. We'll see you next time for part 2. Josh will talk a little bit more about his other projects across the state. Thank you all.